U.S. Air Force sends B-1 bombers back to Guam on temporary deployment. Just a few weeks after the U.S. Air Force ended its 16-year continuous bomber presence in Guam, its B-1 bombers are back on the Pacific Island. The temporary deployment program is designed to keep Washington's adversaries guessing about what its firepower will be where and when. The U.S. Pacific Air Forces announced Friday that 4 of the B-1s, able to carry the largest weapon payloads in the U.S. fleet, had arrived at Andersen Air Force Base on Guam to conduct training and strategic deterrence missions in the Indo-Pacific region. The B-1s, from Dyess Air Force Base in Texas, are being deployed under what the Air Force calls its Bomber Task Force, a plan designed to move the massive warplanes to spots around the world to demonstrate operational unpredictability, the service said in a statement. The Air Force did not specify how long the bombers will be on Guam. Analysts say the tactic makes the U.S. forces harder to target than keeping them on specific bases, as had been the case in the now-ended continuous bomber presence did on Guam. The consistency and predictability of the Guam deployment raised serious operational vulnerabilities. A planner in China's military could have easily plotted ways of destroying the bombers due to their well-known presence, said Timothy Heath, senior international defense researcher with the RAND Corporation think tank in Washington. Since it pulled B-52 bombers from Guam on April 17th, the U.S. has been making its B-1s visible in the Pacific, with missions being flown over from bases in the continental US. That includes a 32-hour flight by 2 B-1s from Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota to the skies over the South China Sea and back last Thursday. Earlier in April, the Air Force sent 2 B-1s from the South Dakota base on a 30-hour round trip to Japan, where they teamed up with Japanese F-15 and F-2 fighters, as well as the U.S. F-16 jets, on a training exercise, the Air Force said. In announcing the deployment of the B-1s to Guam, Lieutenant Col. Frank Welton, Hawkett's Chief of Operations Force Management, touted the U.S. ability to carry more and more powerful weapons than the B-52s that left Guam a few weeks ago. The B-1 is able to carry the LRASM long-range anti-surface cruise missile, giving it an advanced standoff, counter-ship capability, Welton said in a statement. The precision-guided missile is designed to hit adversaries' warships with a penetrating and fragmentation warhead, while keeping the bombers at a low risk of a counterattack. The Air Force said the return of the B-1s to Guam marks their first presence in the Pacific since 2017, when they flew multiple missions with the South Korean and Japanese Air Forces during the height of US tensions with North Korea. Analysts say deployments like the ones the B-1s are making to the Pacific now can be expected to be the new normal for the region. We will stage bombers through Guam periodically, said Carl Schuster, a former director of operations at the U.S. Pacific Command's Joint Intelligence Center. Sometimes they will participate in exercises with our allies and partners. Sometimes they will continue on to the Indian Ocean by way of the South China Sea. The unpredictability of random deployments will also complicate any bad actors' decision-making assumptions. In its second such deployment in nearly a week, the U.S. Air Force sent 2 B-1B Lancer supersonic bombers halfway around the globe to the South China Sea, where ASEAN Chinese forces have increasingly rubbed shoulders in recent days, including the ejection of a U.S. warship from contested waters. This operation demonstrates the U.S. Air Force's dynamic force employment model, in line with the National Defense Strategy's objectives of strategic predictability with persistent bomber presence, assuring allies and partners, the release stated. The Pentagon has moved to adopt the dynamic force employment system as a way of keeping its adversaries off guard by breaking up routine deployments and force movements. Chinese-era naval forces expelled a U.S. warship that trespassed into Chinese territorial waters off the Zhishan Islands in the South China Sea. As the U.S. move could have easily caused an accident, the Global Times wrote, using the Chinese name for the island chain. The message came with a taunt, urging the U.S. to focus on the COVID-19 outbreak at home, rather than engaging in overseas provocations. An echo of messages sent to Beijing for months following military encounters. The U.S. later admitted to the Berry's transit, calling it a Freedom of Navigation Operation, FONAP, a type of a mission in which US and allied warships flaunt the territorial claims of nations like China by behaving as if their claimed territorial waters are actually international waters. This was the Berry's second such mission in a week, as it had left its battle group in the South China Sea just days earlier to sail through the Taiwan Strait, which Beijing regards as internal waters.